Have you ever met someone who made your skin crawl, but you couldn't explain why? They weren't shouting or being obviously cruel. In fact, they seemed perfectly reasonable, even charming. But something deep inside you screamed danger. What if I told you that Carl Jung discovered the most dangerous people aren't the ones who explode with rage or openly threaten you? They're the ones who appear completely virtuous while being utterly convinced of their own goodness. The ones who smile as they harm you, they call it kindness. Jung warned, the refusal to face one's own darkness is where danger begins. Once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the most dangerous person in your life might be the one who seems the most moral. You'll learn to spot the warning signs that even trained psychologists miss. And most importantly, you'll discover how to protect yourself from a psychological trap that has destroyed countless lives. This isn't about obvious predators or violent criminals. This is about something far more sinister. The person who believes they're saving you while they're systematically destroying you. Jung spent decades studying this phenomenon, and what he discovered will change how you see everyone around you. The most dangerous people don't think they're dangerous at all. The hidden architecture of destruction. Carl Jung discovered something that shattered his understanding of human nature. In his private practice, he began noticing a disturbing pattern among his most destructive patients. They weren't the obvious villains, the criminals, the addicts, the visibly unstable. They were the pillars of their communities, which is why no one saw it coming. The helpful neighbors, the concerned friends, the moral authorities. Yet, everywhere they went, chaos followed. Jung realized these individuals possessed what he called the shadow, the parts of themselves they refused to acknowledge. But unlike healthy people who recognize their flaws, these dangerous individuals had achieved something far more sinister: complete shadow blindness. Everyone carries a shadow, Jung wrote, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Think about the people in your life who have caused you the most psychological damage. Were they the obviously toxic ones you could see coming? Or were they the ones who seemed to care about you, who claimed they were trying to help, who made you feel guilty for questioning their motives? The dangerous person Jung identified doesn't see their shadow because they've projected it entirely onto others. They've split the world into two categories: themselves, pure, good, moral, and everyone else, flawed, dark, needing their guidance. This isn't arrogance, it's blindness to one's own capacity for harm. And that blindness makes them capable of extraordinary cruelty while maintaining absolute conviction in their own virtue. The mask. We mistake for the person. To understand why this happens, we need to explore Jung's concept of the persona, the social mask we all wear to function in the world. The persona isn't inherently bad. We all need to adapt our behavior to different social situations. The problem arises when someone becomes completely identified with their persona, losing all connection to their authentic self. Jung observed that children naturally split their personality into acceptable and unacceptable parts. The traits that earned love and approval became the persona. The traits that were rejected, criticized, or punished became the shadow. For Jung, the persona is a social mask, useful, necessary, and dangerous when we mistake it for the whole of who we are. These individuals become what Jung called perfectly adapted. They always know the right thing to say, the appropriate emotion to display, the correct moral position to take. They're social chameleons who never seem to have a bad day or an inappropriate reaction. But here's what makes them dangerous. All that rejected, suppressed material doesn't disappear. It accumulates in their unconscious like psychological pressure in a sealed container. And it has to go somewhere. Since they can't acknowledge these darker impulses in themselves, they see them everywhere else. They become hypervigilant about others' moral failures while remaining completely blind to their own. You might know someone like this. They're always concerned about other people's behavior, always ready to point out what others are doing wrong, always positioning themselves as the voice of reason or morality. But pay attention to what happens around them. Notice how often conflict follows in their wake. Notice how many people they're disappointed in. Notice how they're always the innocent victim in every story they tell. The mechanism of projection. This brings us to one of Jung's most crucial discoveries: projection. When we can't face something in ourselves, we unconsciously see it in others instead. Everything that irritates us about others, Jung observed, can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But dangerous individuals take projection to an extreme. They don't just occasionally see their own flaws in others, they systematically redistribute their entire shadow onto the people around them. Here's how it works. Let's say someone has suppressed their own manipulative tendencies because manipulation was unacceptable in their family. Instead of acknowledging their capacity for manipulation, they become obsessed with other people's manipulative behavior. They'll see manipulation everywhere, in innocent comments, in normal requests, in basic human needs. They become the self-appointed detective of everyone else's hidden motives. But here's the truly insidious part. Their projections aren't random. They unconsciously choose targets who remind them of their own disowned qualities. The very people who trigger their projections are often the ones most similar to their hidden selves. The dangerous person creates their own reality where they're constantly surrounded by the very behaviors they refuse to see in themselves. They don't find evidence. They manufacture it by how they choose to look. And because they genuinely believe in their projections, they're incredibly convincing to others. The reality-distortion field. This is where Jung's discovery becomes truly frightening. Dangerous individuals don't just see the world through a distorted lens. They convince others to see it the same way. To the projector, the story doesn't feel like a story. It feels like reality. Once the shadow takes the wheel, perception bends to fit it. This explains why projectors are so persuasive. Their conviction is authentic because their perception has been reshaped to fit the story. But the truly dangerous part is what Jung called psychological contagion. When someone presents their projections with absolute certainty, others experience pressure to align their perceptions with the projector's version of reality. Think about it. When someone you trust tells you with complete conviction that another person is manipulative, jealous, or cruel, don't you start seeing that person differently even if your direct experience contradicts the claim? This is how families turn against individual members, how workplaces mob innocent employees, how entire communities destroy people based on projected accusations that have no basis in reality. Jung called these group states possession, a kind of psychic infection when an idea or emotion grips a crowd and uses people more than they use it. This is the psyche at war with reality, and it drafts everyone nearby. The escalation pattern. There's a predictable pattern in how dangerous projection unfolds. Stage 1, the honeymoon. Initially, projectors often seem wonderful. They're charming, helpful, deeply interested in you, but they're unconsciously gathering information about your vulnerabilities and shadows that they can later use against you. Stage 2, the subtle shift. One-off character, remarks that don't match your lived intent. Compliment critique sandwiches. I love you, but your character worries me. you dismiss them as misunderstandings. Stage 3, the crystallization. The projections become more frequent and certain. The projector shows no doubt about their perceptions despite your attempts at clarification. They begin interpreting everything you do through their projection filter. Stage 4, the recruitment. They start sharing their concerns about you with others, always from a place of apparent care or worry. I'm worried about Sarah. Have you noticed how she's been acting lately? Stage 5, the isolation. Others begin seeing you through the projector's lens. You find yourself defending against accusations that seem to come from nowhere. You start over-explaining simple choices. Stage 6, the collective possession. Entire groups organize around shared projections. You're systematically excluded, criticized, or attacked for qualities that exist primarily in the projector's unconscious. Understanding this pattern can save you years of psychological damage. The key is recognizing stage 2 and extracting yourself before the projection gains collective momentum. But projection isn't the only dangerous sign Jung identified. Notice who never doubts themselves. The inflation trap. Jung discovered an even more dangerous psychological state, ego inflation. While projectors unconsciously distribute their shadow onto others, inflated individuals become possessed by archetypal energies that exceed their capacity for integration. Inflation is what happens when the ego swells by identifying with something larger, an archetype, and then mistakes that energy for me. The inflated person doesn't just have strong opinions, they become the mouthpiece for truth itself. They don't just care about others, they become the savior. They don't just want justice, they become the divine judge. This archetypal possession is extraordinarily seductive, both for the inflated person and for others. Who doesn't want to follow someone who seems to channel divine wisdom or moral authority? But Jung warned that inflated individuals are time bombs waiting to explode. When someone becomes possessed by archetypal energy, they eventually collapse under the psychic tension of identifying their small ego with transpersonal contents. The warning signs are subtle but deadly. They never doubt their own motivations. While authentic spiritual teachers express humility before mystery, inflated individuals exhibit absolute certainty about their perceptions and judgments. They interpret disagreement as evil. They don't process questioning as useful information, but as resistance to truth, goodness, or divine will itself. Magnetism with no flexibility. Their inflated state creates magnetic attraction while eliminating psychological adaptability. Before they collapse, they often cause devastating damage through their absolute conviction in their own righteousness. Ask, does their certainty survive real evidence? The perfect person problem. The third dangerous sign Jung identified is complete identification with the social persona. When the mask becomes the only identity the person recognizes, these individuals appear to be models of social appropriateness. They always know what to say, how to act, what expressions to wear. They never seem to have bad days, inappropriate reactions, or human inconsistencies. But Jung warned this apparent perfection conceals a terrifying emptiness. When someone invests all their psychic energy in maintaining a flawless external image, their rejected shadow aspects don't disappear. They accumulate in the unconscious like psychological pressure in a sealed container. The danger signs include uncanny social perfection. They never seem authentically spontaneous or genuinely vulnerable. Every interaction feels slightly performed or calculated. Extreme reactions to image threats. Any challenge to their perfect persona triggers disproportionate defensive responses. Emotional flatness. Despite technical social appropriateness, something feels hollow or artificial in their presence. Perfection is a dam. Pressure doesn't vanish. It chooses a crack. Jung documented how persona-identified individuals often experience sudden shadow eruptions, explosive episodes where all their repressed content emerges in destructive ways. The more perfect the persona, the more chaotic and dangerous the eventual shadow explosion. Archetypal possession. Perhaps the most alarming sign Jung identified is archetypal possession, when someone loses their individual identity and becomes a channel for transpersonal energies beyond their capacity to integrate. You can recognize this state when someone's personality seems to disappear, replaced by something ancient and impersonal. The tone goes impersonal, like a role is speaking through them. They stop conversing. They begin pronouncing. They might become possessed by the eternal victim, always suffering and demanding rescue, or the righteous warrior, fighting cosmic battles against evil only they can see, or the divine parent, treating adults like children who need their guidance and control. The possessed person experiences extraordinary certainty and purpose. The normal ambiguity of human consciousness disappears, replaced by absolute conviction that can be extremely persuasive to others. But archetypes contain extreme polarities. The same archetypal energy that produces saints also produces fanatics. The person possessed by the savior archetype will inevitably manifest its shadow aspects, often becoming the very thing they claim to oppose. Jung documented cases where possessed individuals committed acts completely contrary to their conscious values, later experiencing amnesia or elaborate rationalizations to explain their contradictory behavior. The protection protocol. Now that you understand these dangerous patterns, how do you protect yourself? Jung's protection protocol requires tremendous psychological courage. Trust your internal reality over their projections. If someone's perception of you consistently contradicts your internal experience, trust your gut. Your self-knowledge is more reliable than their projections. Don't argue with certainty. Argument feeds the script. Projectors, inflated individuals, and possessed people are immune to contradictory evidence. Document. Paper cuts stop gaslighting. Keep records of conversations and events. Projectors often rewrite history to support their distorted narratives. Seek outside perspective. Talk to trusted others who know both you and the projector. Reality check your perceptions with people outside the projection field. Withdraw early. Distance is not punishment, it's oxygen. If someone shows multiple dangerous signs, strategic withdrawal may be your only protection. Knowing your own darkness, Jung wrote, is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. But where do you defend yourself too quickly, or never doubt yourself at all? The shadow integration imperative. Jung's ultimate message wasn't just about protecting yourself from others. It was about preventing yourself from becoming the dangerous person. People who refuse to face their own capacity for harm inevitably make others the repository for everything they cannot bear to see in themselves. They become unconscious agents of their own rejected darkness. The antidote is shadow integration, the conscious acknowledgement and acceptance of your own capacity for the very behaviors you despise in others. This doesn't mean acting on destructive impulses. It means recognizing that you contain the full spectrum of human possibility, both light and dark. When you can honestly say these words, yes, manipulation, yes, selfishness, yes, cruelty, yes, deception. And because I can see it, I don't have to be it. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, Jung cautioned, but by making the darkness conscious. The most dangerous people are those who believe they have no darkness. The safest people are those who know their darkness intimately and choose to integrate it consciously rather than project it unconsciously. The choice point. Jung's discoveries present us with a fundamental choice. We can continue living unconsciously, projecting our shadows onto others and being victimized by those who project onto us. Or we can undertake the difficult work of conscious integration. This means facing the parts of yourself you've spent a lifetime avoiding. It means accepting your capacity for both creation and destruction. It means taking responsibility for your projections instead of blaming others for triggering them. It's the most difficult psychological work you'll ever undertake, but it's also the most liberating. Because the moment you stop running from your own shadow, you stop being unconsciously controlled by it. The moment you integrate your projections, you become immune to others' projections. The most dangerous sign in a person, according to Carl Jung, isn't the presence of darkness, it's the absolute denial of it. When someone refuses to acknowledge their shadow, they become a walking projection machine, unconsciously spreading their disowned darkness to everyone around them. Your protection lies not in avoiding your own darkness, but in befriending it. Not in maintaining a perfect persona, but in integrating your full humanity. Jung spent his life mapping these dangerous territories of the human psyche, not to create fear, but to create freedom. Freedom from unconscious manipulation, freedom from projection fields, freedom from being recruited into others' psychological dramas. The choice is yours. Will you continue living unconsciously, controlled by forces you refuse to acknowledge? Or will you undertake the hero's journey into your own depths and emerge truly free? Looking inward won't flatter you, it will free you. And freedom is what projection fears most. The most dangerous person you'll ever meet might be looking back at you in the mirror, unless you choose to wake up. What Jung discovered about human psychology can transform how you navigate every relationship in your life. If you're ready to dive deeper into these shadow territories, subscribe for more insights that reveal the hidden dynamics shaping your world. And tell me in the comments, have you ever encountered someone who seemed virtuous but left you feeling crazy? You might have been dealing with shadow projection. Your story could help others recognize the signs.